Every night inside the American base at Siu Chi, men were dying in a place that was supposed to be secure. His was not some lonely outpost in the jungle. This was a major American base northwest of Saigon. Wire, floodlights, artillery, helicopters, patrols. On paper, it looked untouchable. Then darkness came. An explosion somewhere inside the perimeter. Gunfire, shouting, men running toward noise they did not understand. By the time they got there, it was already over. No clear escape route, no obvious attackers slipping back through the jungle. Just dead or wounded Americans and the same question waiting the next morning. Where did they come from? And where did they go? That was the pattern. Night after night, the base kept getting hit by an enemy that seemed to appear from nowhere and vanish into the dirt. Patrols swept the area. The jungle was searched. Suspected routes were watched. Firepower hit the district again and again. Still the attacks kept coming. It felt wrong. Not just dangerous, wrong. Like the war had stopped following the rules the stronger side expected it to follow. Then somebody found the clue. A small hidden opening under leaves. Easy to miss. Too small to matter. An engineer got down on his knees, shined a light inside, and lowered himself into the hole. When he came back out, the problem finally had a shape. Because under Siu Chi there was not just one tunnel. There was a buried world. The system had grown over years, first against the French, then expanded under the pressure of the American War. By the time large U.S. forces arrived, the ground around Siu Chi already hid supply chambers, aid stations, meeting rooms, fighting positions, concealed entrances, and movement routes. This was not just a place to hide from bombs. It was a way to keep the war going while surviving under them. And the earth itself helped. The ground there was hard clay. That mattered. Clay holds shape. It let tunnel builders carve narrow passages that did not collapse easily. Entrances could be tiny and camouflaged. Air shafts could be hidden. Walls could bend. Passages could split, drop, and turn. A bomb could tear open the surface and still leave deeper sections usable below. That created a serious problem for the American way of war. The United States had aircraft, artillery, armor, engineers, and overwhelming firepower. But most of that power was built to dominate what it could see. At Siu Chi, the real battlefield was underground. You could control the roads and still not control the area. You could blast the jungle apart and still fail to destroy the system that mattered. You could make the surface look dead while the ground below kept the war alive. So the Americans tried the obvious answer first. Bomb the area hard enough and the tunnel should collapse. And bombing did real damage. It ripped open the earth. It smashed trees apart. It left craters and wreckage everywhere. But damage was not the same as a solution. The deeper parts of the system often survived well enough to stay useful. Men could go down, wait, and come back. The landscape looked shattered. The underground network kept breathing, so bombing failed to finish the job. Then came gas and smoke. Again, the idea sounded simple. Force the enemy out. Make the tunnels unlivable. But a large tunnel system is not one straight pipe. Airflow bends. Passages split. Sections can be blocked. Depth changes everything. What looked simple above ground became uncertain below it. That failed too. Then came flooding, bulldozers, and heavy engineering. Fill the tunnels with water. Collapse them with machines. Tear up the entrances. Damage the shallow sections. In places, that worked. Some tunnels were denied. Some were collapsed. Some sections were destroyed. But the same truth kept coming back. There was no clean solution at scale. The tunnels were not one target. They were many targets connected into one problem. Detection was hard. Mapping was hard. Demolition was inconsistent. Even when you found an entrance, that did not mean you understood what was behind it. And that is where the story changes shape. Because when bombs do not solve it, and gas does not solve it, and flooding does not solve it, the war gets smaller. A human has to go inside. This is where Siu Chi stops looking like modern warfare. One man, one hole, one flashlight, one pistol. Dirt pressing in from both sides. The men who did this became known as tunnel rats. Some were volunteers. Some were chosen because they were small enough to fit and steady enough to function where most soldiers would panic. Rifles were awkward in tunnels that tight. Bulky gear snagged. Too much equipment was not protection. It was a liability. So the war stripped down. No helicopter could follow a tunnel rat underground. No artillery could help him around the next bend. No squad could spread out and flank an enemy in a passage only one man could enter. A giant military machine collapsed into breathing, listening, and trying not to put a hand in the wrong place. And the tunnels were built to punish mistakes, booby traps, punji stakes, grenades, sudden drops between levels, sharp bends that broke lines of sight, places where a man had to commit his body before he could see what was waiting below. Now reduce the war to body level. You lower yourself into a hole barely wide enough to admit you. Your shoulders scrape clay. The air feels stale. Light becomes a dangerous choice. Too much light gives away your position. Too little leaves you blind. Your own breathing starts to sound loud. Every inch ahead has to be earned with a hand and elbow, a careful shift of weight. The next thing you touch might be a wall. It might be a wire. It might be a sharpened stake. It might be empty space, and then your whole body has to move into darkness you cannot read. That is not ordinary fear. That is buried fear. And what the tunnel rats found mattered. Weapons, maps, orders, supply caches, hidden rooms. Trapdoors leading into larger tunnel complexes. The tunnels were not just defensive holes. They were part of a functioning underground war machine. That is why the phrase underground city fits, not because it was comfortable. It was not. Life below ground was dark, dirty, cramped, and brutal. But it was a hidden world that allowed a weaker force to survive bombardment, preserve supplies, move fighters, and choose when to emerge. And that changed the meaning of control. If the enemy can disappear beneath your base, surface dominance is not enough. If the enemy can survive bombardment and keep fighting underground, then destroying what you can see does not mean you have solved the real problem. To be fair, American forces adapted. Tunnel rats became more skilled. Engineers improved their methods. Important intelligence was captured underground. Some complexes were denied, collapsed, or cleared. But the existence of tunnel rats was also a confession. It meant one of the most advanced militaries on Earth still had to send individual men underground with pistols and flashlights because no aircraft, no bulldozer, and no engineering trick could finish the job cleanly. That is the image that survives. Helicopters overhead, artillery nearby, a giant military machine in motion, and at the center of it, one man on his stomach in a narrow clay tunnel, moving inch by inch through the dark, hoping the next thing he touches is only a wall. The United States could fill the sky. At Siu Chi, it still had to fight for the earth under its own feet.